It was a cold morning when Jacob Reynolds, CEO of one of the country's largest retail chains, decided to step into the world he had built but rarely experienced firsthand. Known for his strict leadership style and a reputation for chasing perfection, Jacob wanted to see what life was like for the employees who worked tirelessly to keep his empire afloat. He had grown curious. Too many complaints about rude customers, employee mistreatment, and lack of appreciation had started surfacing in his reports. Jacob had never worked on the ground floor of his company. From his pristine office in the city's tallest building, he had only ever viewed his stores as numbers on a balance sheet. However, as profits soared, so did the discontent from his workers. He had heard whispers of dissatisfaction, but it wasn't until an anonymous letter landed on his desk that he decided to take action. The letter was written by an employee who claimed to be a cashier at one of his busiest locations. It detailed the struggles of working under a toxic store manager who disrespected employees, ignored their concerns, and created a miserable work environment. The letter concluded with a plea. "If you care about your people, come see how we live." Just once. The words struck Jacob in a way nothing else had. He couldn't shake the idea of being so disconnected from his workforce that he had to be invited to witness their reality. That morning, with no warning, he walked into one of his flagship stores disguised as a regular customer. He wore a simple hoodie, jeans, and sneakers, nothing to suggest he was the billionaire behind the operation. His normally sharp, commanding demeanor was subdued, replaced by the quiet curiosity of a man seeking answers. As Jacob entered the store, he was struck by how chaotic it seemed. Shelves were disorganized, customers looked frustrated, and the employees, though moving quickly, seemed on edge. He wandered around for a while, observing how the team interacted. Most of them wore forced smiles, but there was a noticeable tension in the air. Eventually, he approached the checkout area, where a young cashier, Sarah, was scanning items for a customer. She appeared tired, with dark circles under her eyes and a weariness in her posture that made Jacob pause. She smiled at the customer, but it didn't reach her eyes. As Jacob got closer, he heard the woman behind him in line scoff, complaining loudly about the slow service. "Can you move any slower?" the woman snapped at Sarah. Jacob expected Sarah to defend herself, or at least offer a polite rebuttal, but instead, she mumbled a quiet apology and hurried to finish scanning the items. Her hands trembled slightly as she worked. After the rude customer left, Sarah turned to the next person in line, but before she could greet them, another employee walked by. A man in his early 40s who appeared to be the store manager. "Sarah," he barked, loud enough for the customers nearby to hear. "You need to pick up the pace. You're already behind schedule. We can't afford to have customers waiting because you can't keep up." Jacob froze at the tone. The manager's words weren't just curt. They were humiliating, designed to demean. Sarah didn't argue or defend herself. She simply nodded, her cheeks flushing red, and continued working. Jacob's chest tightened with anger. He stayed in line, observing, until it was finally his turn at the register. As Sarah scanned his items, she offered a small, forced smile and said, "Did you find everything you were looking for?" Jacob nodded but asked softly, "Are you okay?" For a moment, Sarah's composure cracked. She blinked rapidly, as if holding back tears, before quickly composing herself. "I'm fine, sir. Thank you for asking." But Jacob could see she wasn't fine. Something about her quiet strength, her ability to endure such treatment without lashing out, stirred something deep within him. As he walked out of the store, he knew he couldn't leave things as they were. He needed to uncover the full story and take action. Jacob sat in his car in the parking lot, watching the store from a distance. The interaction he had just witnessed gnawed at him. He couldn't shake the manager's condescending tone or the exhausted look in Sarah's eyes. It was as if this wasn't a one-time incident, but something she had endured for a long time. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Jacob decided to investigate further. He returned to the store later in the afternoon, blending in with the crowd as he wandered around. This time, He lingered near the employee break room, pretending to browse the items on a nearby shelf. What he overheard confirmed his worst suspicions. The same manager who had berated Sarah earlier was now speaking to another employee, a young stock boy who looked barely out of high school. The boy was nervously shifting his weight from one foot to the other as the manager lashed out at him for not restocking the shelves quickly enough. "This is unacceptable," the manager snapped. "Do you even care about this job? Because if you don't, there's the door. Plenty of people would kill for your position." "I'm sorry, sir," the boy stammered. "I'll work faster." The manager waved him off dismissively, muttering under his breath about lazy workers as he walked away. Jacob clenched his fists. The toxic culture in this store wasn't just about one rude comment or bad day. It was systemic. This manager had created an environment where employees were afraid to speak up, afraid to make mistakes, and constantly belittled. Jacob decided it was time to get more information. He approached an older woman working in the produce section. She looked like she had been with the company for years, her movements efficient and confident as she organized the fruits and vegetables. "Excuse me," Jacob said, feigning curiosity. "How long have you worked here?" "Almost 8 years," she replied, smiling politely. "And how's the work environment? Do you like the management here?" The woman hesitated, glancing around as if to make sure no one was listening. Then, in a hushed tone, she said, "The work itself is fine, but the management? It's hard. The store manager doesn't treat us very well. Most of us just keep our heads down and do our jobs because we can't afford to lose them. But it's not easy." Jacob thanked her and moved on, his resolve strengthening with every interaction. It became clear that the store manager was the root of the problem. But Jacob wasn't just angry, he was disappointed. This wasn't what he had envisioned for his company. He had built this business to provide opportunities for people, not to create a workplace where employees dreaded coming to work. That evening, Jacob sat down to review the anonymous letter again. It detailed incidents of favoritism, verbal abuse, and an overall lack of respect for the staff. The letter also mentioned that Sarah, the cashier, had once reported the manager's behavior to the corporate office, but nothing had come of it. Jacob was furious. How had this slipped through the cracks? Why hadn't anyone acted on Sarah's complaint? He realized that the corporate culture he had worked so hard to build had failed at some level. And now, it was up to him to make things right. The next morning, Jacob returned to the store with a plan. This time, he wasn't just there to observe, he was there to take action. But he wasn't ready to reveal his identity just yet. Instead, he decided to confront the store manager directly, posing as a concerned customer. What he didn't know was that the confrontation would reveal even deeper issues than he had anticipated. Jacob walked into the store the next morning, his posture calm, but his mind racing. He sought out the manager, determined to gauge his character directly. He found the man near the registers, barking instructions to a group of employees. Jacob approached him with a polite smile, his customer persona still intact. "Excuse me," Jacob said. "Are you the store manager?" The man turned, his face already set in a frown. "Yes, I am. What do you need?" "I've been shopping here for a while," Jacob began, "and I couldn't help but notice how you interact with your staff. It seems a bit harsh." The manager's expression hardened. "Look, running a store isn't about holding people's hands. If you want results, you have to be tough. These people wouldn't get anything done if I didn't push them." Jacob raised an eyebrow, surprised at the man's lack of self-awareness. Interesting perspective. "But don't you think respect might motivate them better?" The manager scoffed. "Respect doesn't pay the bills. Discipline does. If they don't like it, they can leave." Hearing this only solidified Jacob's decision. This wasn't just a bad manager. It was a man who had no understanding of leadership or human decency. But Jacob wasn't ready to expose himself yet. Instead, he spent the rest of the day quietly talking to employees, learning about their experiences, and confirming what he already knew. The store manager's behavior had created a toxic environment that was affecting everyone. In one conversation, Sarah, the cashier, finally opened up. She had been hesitant at first, fearing retaliation, but Jacob's kind demeanor encouraged her to speak. "I tried reporting him to corporate," Sarah admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But nothing happened. They said they'd investigate, but he's still here, and now he's even worse. It's like he knows he can get away with it." Jacob felt a pang of guilt. This was his company. If corporate had failed Sarah, then he had failed her. By the end of the day, Jacob had heard enough. The manager's actions were not only morally wrong, but also a direct violation of company policies. It was time to take off the disguise and address the situation head-on. The following morning, Jacob returned to the store, this time with a team from corporate and an announcement that would shake the entire staff. As he walked in, the employees glanced at him curiously, recognizing him but still unaware of his true identity. Jacob stepped forward, his voice calm but authoritative. "Good morning, everyone. My name is Jacob Andrews, and I am the owner of this company." The store went silent. The manager's face turned pale as he realized who he had been speaking to the day before. Jacob's gaze fell on him, unwavering and cold. "I've spent the last few days observing this store," Jacob continued, "and what I've seen and heard has deeply disappointed me. This is not the culture I envisioned for my company. This is not how we treat people." Jacob's words carried weight, and the employees watched with a mix of shock and relief as their boss addressed the toxic environment they had endured for so long. But the most impactful part of the confrontation was yet to come. Jacob stood tall, his commanding presence filling the room. The employees were frozen in disbelief, their eyes darting between him and the store manager, who was now visibly sweating. "As the owner of this company," Jacob began, "I take full responsibility for what happens within these walls, and I will not tolerate behavior that disrespects or mistreats my employees. This store should be a place of teamwork, mutual respect, and growth, not fear." The silence in the store was heavy. Then Jacob turned to the manager, his voice steady but firm. "You have failed in your duty as a leader," Jacob said. "You've created a hostile work environment, ignored the voices of your employees, and disregarded the values this company stands for. Effective immediately, you are relieved of your position." The manager's jaw dropped. "But wait, you can't do this. I've been here for years." "I can, and I just did," Jacob replied coldly. "Length of service does not excuse mistreatment. You may collect your belongings and leave." The employees exchanged stunned glances, some hiding smiles, others too shocked to react. For many of them, this moment was one they had only dreamed of. After the manager stormed out, Jacob turned back to the staff, his tone softening. "I want to apologize to each of you. The culture that developed here is unacceptable, and it's my job to fix it. Starting today, things will change. I will personally oversee the rebuilding of this team to ensure you are treated with the respect you deserve." One by one, the employees began to applaud. Sarah, the cashier who had confided in Jacob, wiped away a tear. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly seen and heard. Jacob spent the rest of the day speaking individually with each employee, learning about their concerns and ideas. He implemented immediate changes, such as anonymous feedback systems, increased benefits, and leadership training programs. Over time, the store transformed. The team worked harder and happier, motivated by a leader who genuinely cared. Profits rose, but more importantly, morale soared. Jacob visited often, ensuring the culture remained strong and positive. For Jacob, this experience was a reminder of the power of empathy and accountability. By stepping into the shoes of his employees, he not only saved the store, but also strengthened the foundation of his company. As he left the store one final time, Jacob smiled, knowing he had done right by the people who made his vision a reality. And for the employees, he wasn't just a boss, he was a hero who truly cared.